In part 1, we saw how Arnold suggested Sheila write the novel based on their story. So now, let's dive into part 2, the final chapter of this drama. Nick had playfully poked fun at Kin, asking if she ever brushed her teeth during the day or if she was simply too busy with work to remember. Kin, not one to back down, had smirked and replied that if she started brushing her teeth, the whole world would stop spinning. Unfazed by her sass, Nick had reminisced about her university days, saying she used to be the life of the party, sporty and adventurous, but now she was just plain boring. Kin had shrugged nonchalantly, acknowledging those had been the glory days, but now she was too busy for that nonsense, and she told him to stop bothering her. But Nick wasn't finished. He had grabbed her hand and dragged her off to the seaside, insisting she try water skiing. Kin, deciding to indulge him for once, had thrown on a surfing outfit and joined in. Nick had sat back, grinning like a proud mastermind, knowing Sheila's advice to take her out had worked perfectly. But Nick had not joined her because he wasn't about to risk his life on the water. After an exciting water skiing session, Kin had gleefully announced that bungee jumping was next on her list. Nick, summoning all his courage, had boldly declared that he would join her. Kin had raised an eyebrow and teased him about his fear of heights. But Nick had ignored her doubts and prepared himself for what he thought might be his final moment. When the time had come, Nick had taken the leap and promptly fainted mid-air. The guide had to reel him back up, like a flopping fish, and lay him flat. Kin had rushed him to the hospital, where he had woken up to the unexpected sight of Kin chatting away with the doctor, exchanging jokes and WeChats. The doctor had even suggested they go on another adventure together. Nick, still groggy, had shot the doctor a venomous glare. Not only had this guy been annoyingly charming, but he was also way too good-looking for comfort. Nick's jealousy had flared up instantly. When Kin tried to speak to him, he pouted like a sulking child and refused to answer. Meanwhile, back at Sheila's house, the lights had flickered on without a call to an electrician, because of course Arnold had been behind it all. Sheila was struggling to figure out what to write for her novel. Although she had promised Arnold to write about him, she had no idea how to begin. Just then, Arnold messaged her, asking about the progress of the novel. Nervously, she rushed to the balcony to check if he was spying on her, but seeing nothing suspicious, she replied honestly, admitting that she hadn't written anything yet. Arnold, in response, told her that he was ready to help if she needed it. After sending the message, Arnold couldn't stop smiling. The thought of Sheila writing about their story thrilled him, and he shyly imagined her including a romantic element between the characters. He even pictured himself teaching Sheila how a boy holds a girl's hand, hugs her, and slowly leans in for a kiss. The idea made his heart race, and he eagerly waited for the moment when Sheila would understand his feelings. However, holding back his excitement, he decided not to message her again, fearing he might come across as too pushy. The next day, unable to contain his curiosity, Arnold sneaked into Sheila's room when she wasn't home. Spotting her laptop on the table, he hesitated but convinced himself that a quick peek wouldn't hurt. Opening the laptop with high hopes, he imagined finding romantic scenes about him. To his shock, Sheila had portrayed him as a rude, devilish neighbor who was arrogant and bossy. One scene described him throwing away the breakfast Sheila made and snapping at her, claiming to be the young master, who wouldn't tolerate such behavior. To make matters worse, she had titled the novel My Demonic Neighbor. Arnold was furious. It felt like his romantic dreams had been shattered. Here he was fantasizing about love, while Sheila was busy painting him as the villain of the story. He considered confronting her immediately but managed to calm himself. Reminding himself of his feelings for her, he decided instead to help her with the novel in his own way. Sitting down at the desk, Arnold began writing his version of the story. In it, he became a handsome young master from another world who enchanted Sheila at first sight. In his story, Sheila fell head over heels for him, even bringing him breakfast while he slept. When she tried to kiss him, Arnold heroically woke up and stopped her, advising her to keep her distance and not flirt with boys. However, his fictional Sheila clung to him, refusing to let go, and even declared dramatically that she would only marry him or end her life otherwise. Arnold, utterly absorbed in his self-created masterpiece, was certain that his heroic portrayal would win Sheila's heart. It seemed there was no limit to his self-obsession as he ensured that, in this version, he would be the flawless hero who could never let his heroine fall for anyone else. Arnold, feeling a little smug, decides that if he's going to get Sheila to marry him, he might as well seal the deal in style. So he shows his version of the novel, full of his charming self, imagining her swooning over his heroic narrative. But Sheila, reading it, isn't as impressed as he hoped. She flatly calls it bullshit and insists that there's no way she would ever marry someone like Arnold, who's so rude. Arnold, trying to be the logical one, insists that this is exactly the kind of novel she should write after all. What's romance without a bit of arrogance? But Sheila continues her conversation with her teddy bear and complains about how cold Arnold is. He had shown up in her dreams, kidnapped her mom, and then casually slept on her bed. Seriously, Arnold's dreams are nightmares in disguise. They start bickering, and Arnold, determined to get his way, tells Sheila that if she wants to write a novel, it has to be about him, otherwise no novel. He even challenges her to show him her amazing novel if it's so great. Sheila, fearing that Arnold would find out about the real novel she had written about him and lose it, she bolts out of his house, leaving Arnold behind to justify his actions in his head. He tries to convince himself that he did it all for fun, but deep down he wonders if Sheila's terrified of him. He's so handsome that his looks could melt ice. Surely that's why she's scared. The next day, Cece and her boyfriend drop by to meet Arnold at the cafe. Arnold is now on a mission to uncover what type of guys Sheila likes. He asks Cece if Sheila prefers handsome guys, the kind who look like they just stepped off a magazine cover. Cece, totally crushing Arnold's dreams, bluntly says no. Apparently, Sheila isn't into looks at all, she cares more about a person's character. In fact, she became a fan of Nick just because he picked up her handkerchief. Talk about lowering the bar. Arnold, deflated, now wonders if Sheila would go for a guy who's a little more mischievous and enjoys messing with people just for fun. Cece, without missing a beat, tells him that no, that's definitely not her type either. Instead, Sheila likes guys who are kind and considerate, like the one caring for his girlfriend nearby. It's like a light bulb goes off for Arnold, and a tiny smile tugs at his lips. Now he knows exactly what kind of guy Sheila wants, someone peaceful, with a pure heart. Meanwhile, Cece's boyfriend is also having a eureka moment on how to win Cece over. Arnold, energized by this new information, sends Sheila a sweet and respectful message, telling her he'll wait for her that night so they can discuss the novel peacefully. Sheila was shocked after reading the message. A part of her was happy, but she couldn't resist teasing Arnold, so she told him she'd be late and that he shouldn't wait for her. Arnold, however, was unbothered. He replied with a sweet text saying he would wait for her, which brought a smile to Sheila's face. After all, some texts are sweet, but Sheila knew how to spice them up with mischief. Nick arrived at Kin's office, only to find the doctor there too. To his dismay, Kin had even planned their next sports outing with the doctor. Watching them interact, Nick thought bitterly to himself that life wasn't a race, it was a marathon of enduring nuisances. First, he had barely escaped one troublemaker, and now another was clinging to him. Frustrated, he stormed into his cabin but kept a secret eye on the duo. Later, Kin went rock climbing with the doctor and managed to outperform him effortlessly. Impressed, the doctor remarked that Nick must like her, pointing out how he had gone bungee jumping with her despite his fear of heights. Kin brushed it off, saying that it wasn't possible. She'd known Nick for years, and he was far too straightforward. If he had such feelings, he would have said something. The doctor claims that men often become clueless when they fall for their friends. His words left Kin lost in thought. That evening, Sheila arrived at Arnold's house to discuss work. To her surprise, she found him sitting stylishly by the window, quietly reading a book. Just as she reached, Arnold walked over, opened the door for her, and welcomed her in with an air of politeness that felt completely out of character. He even offered her his jacket, commenting on how cold it was, and he suggested that she should take care of herself. Sheila couldn't believe what she was seeing. Arnold's politeness was like a sudden storm on a sunny day, unpredictable and unnerving. When she wanted water, Arnold got up and fetched it from the refrigerator without complaint. This time, Sheila couldn't hold back. She asked him directly why he was behaving so politely and whether she had done something wrong. Arnold simply replied that she was overthinking. But Sheila couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As Sheila began writing her novel, Arnold sat silently nearby, not disturbing her. Surprised, Sheila asked if he wasn't going to give her any ideas for the story. Arnold smiled and replied that he respected her creative freedom and that she could write however she pleased. Hearing this, Sheila's heart skipped a beat. Then, when Arnold gently wiped food off her lips, Sheila reached her breaking point. She abruptly announced that she would finish her novel at home. Arnold was so angry and he couldn't believe her reaction. He thought to himself that despite all his kindness, Sheila was still behaving indifferently. Sheila felt relieved to escape that devil, but Arnold's sudden change in behavior haunted her thoughts. Shaking it off, she returned to her novel and she wrote an ending where her boyfriend transformed into a kind and caring person who never troubled her again. But as Sheila read the ending, it felt painfully dull. Her ideal boyfriend was now as outdated as yesterday's news. She stared at the screen, realizing that something inside her had changed. A creative block might be bad, but realizing your heart's betrayal was worse. Disturbed, she wondered how it was possible that her dream boyfriend now seemed boring. She eventually fell asleep, her mind spinning with unanswered questions. The next morning, her phone rang. Half asleep, Sheila answered it without looking, yelling into the phone that nothing could fix her situation as she had lost her talent and couldn't write a good boyfriend character anymore. She assumed Arnold was on the line. But to her surprise, it was Cece, asking for help. Arnold and his entire gang arrived at the gym in what could only be described as a mafia-style entrance. Both Sheila and C thought that now the gym owner would have to face the consequences. But instead of confronting the owner aggressively, Arnold began speaking to him in a calm and collected manner. He suggested that if the owner didn't want Cece at the gym, at least he should return the money she had paid, as Arnold insisted they were good people. The gym owner seemed taken aback by Arnold's calm approach and responded that he had no money belonging to Cece. Seeing this, Sheila approached Arnold and asked him what exactly he was doing. She pointed out that if the situation required such a polite approach, then why had she brought him along? Arnold calmly replied that he had promised himself he would not resort to fighting anymore and continued to engage with the gym owner in a peaceful manner. However, when the gym goons tried to take advantage of Arnold's newfound peaceful demeanor, Arnold quickly turned the situation around. Using his power, he managed to teach them a lesson without needing to fight. Sheila, watching this, felt a sense of pride, glad to see Arnold back in his old self, using both his wit and strength to handle the situation. Arnold even recorded a video of the gym goons and their wrongdoings. As they were about to leave, Arnold warned the gym owner that if Cece's money was not refunded to her account, he would hand the video over to the police. The gym owner, visibly panicked, immediately handed his phone to Arnold and told him to transfer as much money as he needed. Cece was overjoyed by the turn of events, and Sheila, deeply impressed, praised Arnold for what he had done. Arnold's gang, in celebration, lifted him up in the air. When Cece thanked Sheila, she deflected the praise, saying that it was all Arnold's doing. She couldn't help but enjoy the rare moment where Arnold was the hero. On the way back, Sheila teased Arnold, saying he had looked very cool, especially when he had used his phone to threaten the gym owner. Arnold then asked, somewhat playfully, if this meant that Sheila's opinion of him had changed. Sheila casually responded that it hadn't. She still saw him as the same person who used his power to show off and trouble others. Arnold, frustrated, let his temper flare and exclaimed that all his efforts to change had been for nothing. He had been trying so hard not to trouble anyone, just so Sheila might see him in a better light. Sheila, taken aback by his outburst, couldn't find the right words. Sensing her confusion, Arnold quickly tried to clarify, saying that he hadn't been trying to impress her specifically but had hoped that his efforts might also make him a better character for her novel. Sheila softened and promised that she would write him as the coolest boyfriend in her novel, which made Arnold smile. She began to sweetly coax him, and Arnold, unable to resist, forgave her. That night, as Sheila reflected on everything that had happened, she recalled all the times Arnold had protected her, cared for her, and made things better for her. She found herself smiling, realizing that maybe Arnold wasn't as bad as she had thought. Just then, Sheila received a message from Cece, who had sent several pictures of Sheila. In every photo, Sheila was smiling and looking at Arnold. Cece had asked, in the message, if Sheila was sure she didn't like Arnold. Sheila, reading the message, felt her cheeks turn red, unsure of how to respond. Sheila, smiling, tells herself that this isn't true at all. The next day, after meeting in the office, Kin stops Sheila and talks about the progress so far. But actually, Kin is unsure how to bring up Nick in their conversation. Before she could even ask, Sheila informs Kin that their boss hasn't come to the office for 2 days and has been sounding very dull. Hearing this, Kin becomes a little worried and keeps recalling what the doctor had said about Nick liking her. She decides to call Nick to ask how he is, but Nick, seeking peace, had gone to a monastery and wasn't expecting her call. Kin wanted to ask Nick about this, but she didn't have the courage to know where to start. Finally, she begins by telling him that the doctor has a girlfriend. Hearing this, Nick jumps with joy like a madman. Kin also tells Nick that she wants to talk to him about something, which makes Nick a little nervous. But he's thrilled that he's finally free from the doctor's interference. Nick abruptly leaves his meditation session and rushes out of the monastery. That night, he starts thinking about what Kin might want to talk about. He wonders if she has figured out his feelings and texts her. Kin decides to confront him about this, but then memories from her college days resurface. She recalls when Nick told his father that he wanted to start his own company. Instead of supporting him, his father discouraged him, saying he wasn't capable enough. When Kin intervened and offered to help Nick, his father accused her of manipulating Nick into such ideas and she was after his son. Nick defended Kin, saying she was just a good friend and that he would never like her. This deeply hurt Kin, as she liked Nick at the time. Remembering this, she decides not to discuss her feelings, thinking Nick could never like her. Meanwhile, Sheila and her group are in a party mood. At the party, Arnold discovers that Cece's boyfriend is actually just a friend. Arnold reassures him that Cece will soon fall in love with him. Sheila, observing everything, tells Cece that the guy seems like a nice person and might even like her. Sheila encourages Cece to give him a chance, to which Cece replies that she'll think about it. After the party, Sheila and Arnold have an arm wrestling match. Arnold neither wants to win nor let Sheila win, but he gets lost in Sheila's sparkling eyes and lovely smile, making him lose focus. This leads to Sheila winning the match, and she starts celebrating. In her celebration, she gets very drunk. Arnold tries to stop her from drinking more, but Sheila acts adorably, laughing at him during their conversation. Arnold moves closer to her, charmed by her demeanor. On the way back home from the party, Arnold asks Sheila if she was genuinely happy with the group. Sheila replies that they are all her friends, almost like brothers, and she trusts them. Arnold then asks if she sees him as another friend. Sheila laughs and firmly denies it, saying he's neither a friend nor a classmate. When Arnold persists, she teases him by asking if he wants to become her brother, leaving Arnold dumbfounded. Arnold finally declares that he's her neighbor and that he's always available for her and teleports. Sheila labels him her business partner, which makes Arnold happy that they at least have some relationship. That night, Sheila gives Arnold the story she's written to read. She's nervous about his reaction, as she's made his character even cooler than the main hero but kept him as a villain. She worries he might not like it. But to her surprise, Arnold loves it and tells Sheila that the story is great, but it lacks martial arts, so he offers to teach her and invites her over that night to work on the final outline of the novel. After Sheila leaves, Arnold hugs his teddy bear and says, "See? I told you I'd change my first impression from then on." They dive into work. While writing the martial arts scenes, Arnold also gives Sheila practical demonstrations, which impress her. Over time, their friendship deepens, and Sheila starts to care for Arnold too. Eventually, their novel is completed, but Sheila insists on naming it My Demonic Neighbor, while Arnold suggests My Favorite Hero. In the end, Sheila decides on My Bad. Though the story is finished, Sheila admits to Arnold that she still finds the romance plot unrealistic because she can't marry the villain in real life. Hearing this, Arnold feels a bit disheartened. The next day, at the office, everyone reviews the novels. Kin, who has just returned from a business trip, encourages Sheila to focus on completing her work and ignore distractions, which makes Sheila happy. The office manager brings a list of shortlisted novels to Kin, and Sheila's My Bad is at the top. Kin is thrilled, as she had full confidence in Sheila. When Sheila receives the mail about being shortlisted, she hugs Arnold in excitement but then feels a little awkward. The next day, both Sheila and Arnold dress up and go to the office together. There, the manager and Kin praise their novel, appreciating how the protagonist of their novel is a villain. When they leave the office, they run into Nick. Upon learning that Kin is back, Nick immediately goes to meet her without saying much. Kin, feeling nervous, finally gathers the courage to ask Nick, with a poker face, if he likes her since someone told her he does. Kin clarifies that, in her mind, they are best friends and there's nothing romantic between them. Hearing this, Nick walks away without answering, thinking to himself that no matter how hard he tries, Kin will never see him as a boyfriend. On the way home, Arnold drapes his coat over Sheila, explaining that he's doing it to help her understand the emotions in the novel. By this point, they've done all the things their novel's characters did, like going on movie dates, enjoying meals together, and having fun. Now, Arnold makes his next move. He looks into Sheila's eyes, gently touches her hand, and holds it. He wants her to realize the feelings he has for her. Sheila also started developing some feelings for Arnold. Back home, she would find herself smiling at his photos because she was finally beginning to understand these emotions. But she never imagined she'd feel this way about Arnold. Arnold was at home, utterly confused. Earlier, he was simply looking for excuses to meet Sheila. Now, he couldn't stop dreaming about spending every moment with her. This led him to question himself: could he really be in love with Sheila? Did he want to marry her? But Arnold quickly dismissed the idea, telling himself, no way. I'm the young master of a powerful clan. How could I ever think of getting married to someone? And just the thought made him feel shy. The next day at the office, Sheila was reminiscing about her conversation with Arnold and was absolutely over the moon. Just then, Kin called her and informed her that the shortlisted novelist from their company had been selected for a small trip. Sheila was ecstatic, and her mind immediately went to how she would enjoy this trip with Arnold. Maybe even sneak in a kiss. But as she was lost in these daydreams, G caught her staring into space and asked what on earth she was doing. Embarrassed, Sheila snapped out of it and ran away to avoid further questions. Now, these two Romeos were dealing with their respective stories. On one hand, Nick was talking to Arnold, saying, "This whole love department is way too tough for me. I keep failing in all my attempts." Arnold, trying to be wise, replied, "Love is easy." Nick stared at him and said, "Look who's talking." Arnold clarified, "If two people want to be with each other, get married, and have kids. That's love, simple as that." Hearing this, Nick felt a surge of courage and ran straight into the middle of a meeting to share his opinion on novels. He told Kin, it's not always harassment when a guy teases a girl. It could also mean he likes her. Sheila overheard this and realized Nick was probably talking about someone's feelings, maybe even Arnold's. This got her thinking, how would she tell Arnold about the trip? What if he refused to go? That evening, both Sheila and Arnold were at his house. Arnold was worried that now the novel project was over, Sheila wouldn't spend any more time with him. To keep Sheila around a little longer, Arnold asked for help in cooking, and he casually asked if they would stop meeting now. Sheila laughed and reassured him that, of course, they wouldn't, as they were friends and could meet any time. Hearing this, Arnold felt overjoyed. Back at home, Sheila found herself pacing toward the balcony repeatedly, wondering how to bring up the trip. She wished there was someone she could share her feelings with. Just then, Arnold appeared behind her and asked what was on her mind. Under Arnold's persistent questioning, Sheila finally revealed that she had been invited on a trip and asked him if he'd like to come along. She also added, nervously, "But if you don't want to go, it's totally fine." Arnold countered with, "What do you want?" Sheila, flustered, said she hadn't decided yet. At that moment, her mom entered the scene, asking whom she was talking to. Sheila somehow managed to send her mom back to her room and then awkwardly told Arnold to go home as well. Arnold, while leaving, said, "I'll wait for your decision." The next day, Arnold showed up fully dressed and ready outside Sheila's house, intending to discuss the trip himself. But when he knocked, it wasn't Sheila who answered. It was her mom. Arnold tried to fix the awkward situation and eventually entered Sheila's house, where her mom told him that Sheila had gone to her high school. Apparently every year, Sheila helps out with their annual function. Sheila's mom tells Arnold that ever since Sheila's first love rejected her, she has stayed away from such things. When Arnold asks who her first love was, her mom hints towards the wall. She explains that during high school, Sheila had a huge crush on her son, Mark. Unfortunately, Mark had no feelings for Sheila and even knew she liked him. Instead of being kind, he constantly teased her, made her do random tasks, and spoke to her rudely. Whenever Sheila visited Mark's house with excuses to meet him, he would insult her by commenting on his mom's bad cooking and ask her to leave. Her mom describes it as an innocent, one-sided love. But after the fire incident, Sheila stopped trusting people, and she even started experiencing panic attacks. Listening to all this, Arnold, while looking at Sheila's photo, realizes how pure and innocent she is. The next day, Kin also arrived at Sheila's high school because she was always honored as a model student. Nick showed up too, even though he hated such gatherings, but he was willing to tolerate it all for Kin. Meanwhile, Sheila went to the same storeroom she used to visit to secretly watch Mark, even though he always chased her away. This time, while trying to take down a box, it almost fell on her, but Arnold appeared just in time to save her. Sheila starts to feel that she might be falling in love again, but she hesitates to admit it, fearing Arnold might reject her too. Noticing Sheila holding one of Mark's drawings, Arnold says to her, "I've never thought you were dumb. You're just really innocent. Different from other girls, but that's what makes you special." Hearing this, Sheila decides she won't let this chance slip away and loudly asks Arnold if he'll go on the trip with her. Arnold, who was waiting for this moment, happily agrees. At the party, the principal praises Nick for bringing honor to the school, but Nick's father sarcastically taunts him. Upset, Nick leaves and Kin follows him. She hears Nick venting about how his father has always criticized him. Kin comforts him, explaining that his father cares for him but struggles to show it properly. Nick thanks Kin and admits he's only here because of her. Just then, a couple asks Nick to pose for a photo, and after he leaves, Kin remembers the time she made a deal with Nick's father. Years ago, when Kin had gone to Nick's father for Nick's business idea again, he agreed on one condition, that she would never date Nick. Kin reluctantly accepted the deal, promising never to reveal this to Nick. This memory confirms that Kin has loved Nick for a long time but has been held back by her promise. Meanwhile, back at Sheila's house, her mom suggests that she should wear nice, feminine clothes for the trip instead of dressing like the boys. Arnold, on the other hand, prepares to confess his feelings but notices that the trip location is known for fireworks, a traditional way of confessing love. He quickly drops the idea, remembering Sheila's fear of fireworks. Sheila is equally impatient, wondering when she'll finally confess her feelings. The next morning, Arnold goes shopping. Sheila also finishes her shopping and leaves breakfast at Arnold's door with a text. That night, both pack their bags and wish each other good luck for the trip. The next day, Arnold arrives early, and when he sees Sheila, he finds her looking stunningly different from her usual self. As they are ready to go, G approaches Arnold and asks if he remembers her. Arnold internally groans, thinking, "How could I forget the girl who ruined my lunch with Sheila?" In between, Sheila goes to Kin and asks about Nick's whereabouts. Kin casually mentions that Nick has no interest in trips and likely won't join. But just then, Arnold points out that Nick has arrived. Everyone, including Kin, is surprised as Nick usually avoids such events. Nick has decided to do things that might impress Kin. When Kin asks him why he's here, he brushes it off, saying she's overthinking as he used to go on trips during college too. Due to budget constraints, two people have to share one room, and Nick and Arnold are paired together. Nick suggests booking a separate hotel room, but Sheila offers to book one for him herself. Arnold snatches the phone from her and says, "There's no need for that. Sheila, you're not Nick's assistant anymore, you're an independent writer. You don't have to do things like this for anyone." Arnold, who once went out of his way to bring Sheila and Nick closer, now seemed determined to keep her away from Nick. Before the trip began, everyone asked Nick again if he was willing to join them. With his usual air of indifference, Nick agreed and decided to go along. Later, Arnold managed to slip away with Sheila to have a quiet meal together, away from the group. As they enjoyed their food, Arnold made sure Sheila tried all the dishes. Sheila was about to remark that it was the best day of her life when the other office colleagues unexpectedly showed up. Not wanting their moment to be interrupted, Arnold quickly whisked Sheila away, and the two continued to enjoy their private little outing. While wandering around, Sheila spotted a pottery shop and insisted that they go inside. Arnold, despite his reluctance, followed her in. The two began teasing each other, especially when Arnold struggled to shape the clay. Sheila placed her hands over his to guide him, and for a brief moment they got lost in each other's presence. But Nick sat quietly, watching Kin laugh and enjoy herself with her colleagues. Arnold noticed him sitting alone and approached him, suggesting that Nick should just confess his feelings to Kin. Arnold tried to convince him that it wasn't as difficult as Nick thought. However, Nick disagreed, saying it wasn't that simple. He admitted that reading Sheila's novel had taught him that true happiness lies in seeing the one you love happy. However, he wasn't fond of the novel's ending. Nick then recalled the story to Arnold, mentioning a boy from another world who came to fulfill a girl's wish. During the process, the two fell in love, but once the wish was granted, the boy returned to his own world. He left the girl all alone. Nick remarked how heartbreaking it must have been for the girl. Hearing this, Arnold became lost in thought, realizing maybe this is his faith. He knows that he would have to leave Sheila once her wish was fulfilled. The idea deeply unsettled him, but he didn't voice his concerns. Sheila noticed the change in his demeanor and asked why he seemed so upset. Arnold avoided the question and brushed it off. Later that night, everyone decided to watch the fireworks, but Arnold declined to join them. Seeing this, Sheila also chose to stay behind. As the others left for the event, Arnold and Sheila quietly began walking back to their room together, both wrapped up in their own thoughts. The fireworks lit up the night sky and everyone seemed to be enjoying the show. Everyone except Nick, who, as always, stood at a distance, merely watching. However, this time, he had resolved to confess his feelings to Kin. Gathering his courage, he blurted out his feelings, admitting that he liked her. Kin, who had secretly longed to hear those words, responded cautiously, saying that his confession might complicate things. She worried that now either people assumed they were in an office relationship, or she could cost her a good friend forever. Despite her concerns, Nick assured her that, no matter what she decided, he would always stand by her. Arnold sat in his room, melancholy as he gazed at the fireworks. A call from the portrait shop reminded him of the gift he had created for Sheila, intending to propose to her. Yet, thinking he might have to leave her forever, he decided against it. As he brooded, Sheila's voice suddenly broke through his thoughts. Teleporting to her side, he asked where the troublemaker was. Sheila, grinning, accused him of being the troublemaker. She admitted that she had called him just to see him. Annoyed, Arnold began to leave, but Sheila stopped him, jokingly warning that he'd get a headache if he left. Mustering courage, she finally confessed her feelings for him. Arnold, conflicted, told her they couldn't be together. He explained that he had no identity in this world and didn't know his past. Dwelling on it, he feared that would rob him of his present. Arnold says he can't be selfish and watch Sheila like this just for himself, knowing how uncertain life can be. As the fireworks start, he hugs Sheila to protect her from a panic attack. Sheila interrupts him and reassures him that she's no longer afraid of anything and doesn't want to worry about the future anymore. She asked directly if he would be her boyfriend. This moment, Arnold can't hold himself back. He nods in agreement, and just as the fireworks light up the sky, he gently covers Sheila's eyes. He's about to kiss her when, suddenly, a group of girls shows up, interrupting the moment. They started laughing. Arnold grumbled about being the young master of everything. The two eventually walked back together, sharing a light-hearted moment. Nick, heartbroken by Kin's earlier words, began packing his bags to leave. Because Kin had told him to forget everything he had said and act as if nothing had happened, and she rejected him. Deeply hurt, Nick didn't respond and quietly left. Back with Arnold and Sheila. He handed her the gift he had prepared. It was a clay doll with a bell, and Arnold told her that when the bell rings, it will remind her of his heartbeat. Sheila, recalling the kiss he had almost given her before, teased him about it. As Arnold leaned in to kiss her, G interrupted, forcing them to flee. Laughing at their predicament, they wondered why they had to hide their relationship. Sheila reminded him that if G found out, the entire company would know by the next morning. For now, they agreed to keep some distance at work, though Arnold wasn't too bothered by the thought of their relationship becoming public. Both of them wished each other good night and left. The next day when they were leaving, Arnold was already sitting on the bus while Sheila was searching for him. It seemed like he was upset with Sheila, so he got on the bus, and when Sheila asked why he hadn't waited for her, Arnold replied that someone had told them to keep their distance. Sheila sat at a distance, but after some time went over to him and tried to talk, but Arnold didn't respond. Perhaps he was even more upset than before. Sheila, too, became upset and sat down. Arnold then placed an earphone in her ear, which made Sheila happy. She took his hand, rested her head on his shoulder, and began enjoying the journey. Sheila was worried about how to explain things, but Arnold reassured her that there was nothing difficult in it. If she couldn't explain, he would, and besides, Mom always wanted her to have a good boyfriend. Sheila replied that no matter what happened, when it came to relationships, all old concerns resurfaced. She added that Mom would definitely ask questions like where he lived, what his job was, and what business he did. Arnold acknowledged this, saying that he wouldn't say anything until Sheila told him to. Later, when Sheila reached home, she was behaving like her mother would know about them. Then she told her to bring Arnold with her so that they can eat food. She kept making excuses to avoid bringing it, but Mom eventually sent her against her will. This made Mom wonder if the two of them had possibly had a fight. Meanwhile, they were both stressing over what to do, whether to go or not. They realized that if they didn't go, they'd starve by the next day. But if they did, Mom might find out everything. However, they reassured themselves, thinking it wasn't the first time they'd be eating together, and decided to deal with the consequences later. Before leaving, he hugged Sheila, saying it was for morale support, as though he were heading into a major battle. Before they even reached, Mom had gone to check on them, wondering why they were taking so long. As soon as she spotted them, they immediately started doing random exercises to avoid suspicion. Later, Mom mentioned to Arnold that Sheila was skilled at making dumplings and could even teach him. Sheila instantly refused, but Arnold agreed enthusiastically. She then whispered to Arnold that she had asked him to maintain some distance, to which he calmly reassured her that nothing would happen. Afterward, Sheila sat beside him to teach him how to make dumplings, and they ended up joking and having fun together. When the dumplings were ready, Sheila asked Mom if she had added anything odd to the dish. Mom replied, teasing her for always finding fault in her cooking, and pointed out how Arnold enjoyed her food without complaints. Later, when Mom asked to show pictures of the trip, Sheila saw that all the pictures on her phone were with Arnold, and even Arnold's phone was filled with their pictures. His mother accidentally grabbed her phone, which led to some tension. Sheila quickly assured her that next time she would take her along. Both of them were quite nervous at that moment. Sheila then hurriedly took Arnold to his house, explaining to his mother that they had some important tasks. Once they were back home, they felt relieved, thinking they had avoided any trouble. They laughed at how, from now on, they would always be cautious, since even the slightest sound would make them fear that his mother might discover everything. Sheila advised Arnold to take care and keep in touch via WeChat before leaving. Meanwhile, Arnold's heartbeat was racing, and Sheila, avoiding her mother's gaze, reached home and messaged Arnold, saying that her mother didn't find out and their secret was safe. Arnold then mentioned that he would accompany her to the office the next day, but Sheila told him not to, as it would make things obvious. Though she wanted him to pick her up later. The next morning, Arnold sent her a good morning message, which made Sheila very happy. Later, when she reached the bus stop, she saw Arnold waiting for her with flowers, greeting her cheerfully. Sheila waved goodbye as she got on the bus. At the office, Sheila felt very happy, having had her biggest wish fulfilled. She then went to Nick's office to deliver some files. She got the scare of her life when Nick suddenly appeared. She nervously handed him the weekly schedule, blurting out that she thought he wasn't around. Noticing her jittery state and the bag lying nearby, she couldn't help but ask if he had skipped going home after the trip. But Nick didn't bother with an answer and instead casually asked if he had a meeting with Kin. Now Nick is not even hiding. He then instructed her to cancel all meetings except the one with Kin, leaving Sheila to mutter something about how men and their mood swings were worse than the weather. Meanwhile, Kin's cryptic advice to pretend nothing happened kept buzzing in Nick's head, making him grumpier by the minute. During a meeting to discuss the prizes for winning authors, he finally blurted out the question that had been haunting him: why should he pretend? His outburst earned him shocked stares from everyone in the room, as if he'd just declared he was quitting to become a stand-up comedian. Kin, sensing the brewing storm, promptly canceled the meeting, saying they'd discuss it later. After the meeting, Nick cornered Kin for answers, but she deflected by pointing out that he hadn't gone home. She even offered to call him a driver, but Nick, clearly on a roll with his newfound courage, refused. This prompted Kin to lose her cool, questioning how they'd work together if he kept behaving like this. To make her point extra dramatic, she even offered to resign, because why solve problems when you can escalate them? Later, Sheila was summoned to Kin's office and told to arrange a personal meeting with Arnold. Sheila called Arnold, deciding to have some fun by pretending to be calling from a bank. Arnold, not one to miss a chance to play along, pretended she had dialed the wrong number. But it didn't take long for his annoyance to surface, as he grumbled about the late call. Sheila cheekily apologized, explaining that her job and her responsibility to support her jobless boyfriend kept her busy. Arnold assured her that he wouldn't stay jobless for long and promised a big surprise, leaving Sheila wondering if he was about to start selling kidney. Sheila asked Arnold to pick her up in the evening, hinting that she also had a surprise. She confided in him about Kin's possible fight with Nick and sought his opinion. Arnold, clearly jealous, advised her to stay away from Nick unless it was an emergency. Realizing his jealousy, Sheila couldn't resist teasing him further. When they finally met, Sheila rushed toward Arnold with the excitement of someone spotting free snacks at a party. Arnold hugged her before she started rummaging through his pockets for her surprise. Arnold, amused by her impatience, revealed a fake birth certificate he had created to enroll in college. He proudly announced his plan to take over the company in a few years, leaving Sheila wondering if he had secretly been watching too many crime dramas. She quickly put a stop to his grand schemes, deleting the certificate while declaring that she could handle supporting her cute boyfriend. Arnold followed her to her old high school, where Sheila regaled him with tales of her mischievous exploits. Later, in a classroom, Sheila told a quirky story about a classmate who always wrote you in his answers on the board. Inspired, Arnold wrote Sheila's name surrounded by hearts on the board, earning a delighted smile from her. She responded by adding his name next to hers, which sent Arnold into full romantic mode. Unfortunately, their moment was interrupted by a guard, forcing them to flee like teenagers caught sneaking into a concert. The next morning, Sheila nervously instructed Arnold to come later and share any updates from the meeting. She avoided holding his hand or hugging him, terrified her colleagues might spot them. Arnold spotted a gift in a shop window and decided it was perfect for Sheila. At Kin's office, Arnold was grilled about his contribution to the novel. Kin showed him a copy of the novel, revealing that Sheila had portrayed him as a villain. Arnold's jaw dropped, but the real heartbreak came when he realized Sheila had known the truth about him all along. Feeling like the punchline of a cruel joke, he left without saying a word. When Sheila tried to stop him, Arnold confronted her, demanding to know the truth about his existence. Learning he was just a fictional character, a devil she had created, broke his heart. Arnold decided he needed time alone and left, leaving Sheila with the gift to deal with the awkwardness of being dumped by her own creation. Back at the office, Sheila stared at the gift Arnold had left, tears streaming down her face as she wondered if things could get any worse. Then Kin called her to clarify her actions. Sheila, in turn, apologized for interfering in Kin's life, leading to a heartfelt exchange of apologies. Arnold brooded in a dark room, lamenting that his entire existence was a lie. Sheila knocked on his door, pleading for him to let her in, but he ignored her. Sheila waited for him outside, holding on to hope. Arnold spotted her but avoided her. Later, feeling guilty, he admitted to his teddy bear that he didn't know how to face her. In the end, he realized he couldn't leave her hanging forever. He'd have to deal with her. Sheila apologized to Arnold for not telling him everything earlier. However, Arnold assured her that he wasn't angry and in fact believed everything that had happened was beyond her control. Sheila, sensing Arnold's distress, remarked playfully that perhaps his concern stemmed from the fact that she had created him, making her like a mother to him. She joked that no one would want to date their mother. Arnold, amused by her silly thought, laughed and admitted he'd never considered that but might as well think about it now. Arnold then revealed that his real confusion lay in the fact that his life lacked purpose. He explained that he wasn't even a real person. Earlier, he had at least believed he was an ancient traveler, but now he realized it was all a lie. He admitted he had no memories of his childhood, which only reinforced his doubts about his existence. Arnold expressed his frustration over having no purpose for being alive. Sheila felt deeply sorry for him and offered to take full responsibility for everything that had happened. Arnold firmly told her not to treat him like her son, as he wanted to figure out his purpose on his own. Sheila understood his feelings and hugged him, asking him to promise that whenever he found the answer, he would share it with her. Arnold promised, which gave Sheila some relief, and she left him alone to reflect. The next morning, before leaving for work, Sheila left Arnold a note saying that if he discovered his life's purpose that day, he should call her. If not, he should at least enjoy an ice cream as a treat from her. At work, Kin was surprised to find her desk covered in gifts. However, she was even more shocked to see her colleagues looking unusually somber. Upon asking, her coworker revealed that Sheila had informed everyone about her resignation, as she could no longer keep it a secret. Moved by their reaction, Kim became emotional. Trying to lighten the mood, she jokingly told the women not to cry, as crying made them look unattractive. Ironically, it was the men who started crying instead, which amused Kim so much that she began taking their pictures. In her farewell speech, she expressed gratitude for her years at the company, but admitted she was exhausted and wanted to take a break to live life on her terms. Her co-workers wished her good luck for the future, and they all took a group photo together. Later, Nick, furious about her resignation, confronted her, declaring that he wouldn't let her leave. Despite his anger, Sheila remained calm, stating that she had made up her mind and handed him some files she had already reviewed. Nick threw the files on the table and asked her if she had ever loved him, even for a moment. Avoiding his gaze, Sheila replied that she didn't want to discuss the past. Heartbroken, Nick left the room, and Kin spent the evening alone, lost in thought. That night, as Kin prepared to leave, she had a heartfelt conversation with Sheila, and she encouraged her to believe in herself. Kin assured her that one day she would become a great writer, just like Nick. Sheila was skeptical of her own abilities, feeling inspired by Kin's words. When Kin leaves the office, she finally is satisfied that at last she had fulfilled her promise. But Nick was more furious with her, and wondered why Kin couldn't answer her a simple question. After leaving her office, Kin directly went to a restaurant and told them that she had reigned. When Sheila reached her home, she wanted to talk to Arnold, but she didn't do anything because she thought it was better for him. Arnold still wrestling with his thoughts. Then Sheila went to sleep with her mother and asked her about life. And her mother told her that no one comes in life with full knowledge. They don't even have a choice to choose their parents. After reading Sheila's note, Arnold came to the balcony to have some fresh air. Sheila also came, and she told her to do whatever makes you happy and you will live a good life. Sheila shared the wisdom her mother had given her about life. She explained that life's purpose wasn't predetermined but created by embracing the things one loves. Arnold appreciated her words but insisted he needed to figure things out on his own. Noticing his lack of self-care, Sheila teased him, warning that if he continued neglecting himself, he might lose his charm and she would have to return him to the fairy who created him. Arnold chuckled at her playful scolding but still felt burdened by his lack of memories and purpose. Sheila's efforts left him feeling slightly more hopeful about finding his way forward. She had promised Arnold that she would take full responsibility for him, and with that, they both wished each other good night. Finally, Arnold managed to sleep peacefully. The next morning, Nick found himself facing his father, who unsurprisingly didn't mince his words. His father remarked that it wasn't the end of the world just because Kin had resigned. He reminded Nick that as the company's boss, it was high time he learned how to run the business properly. Nick, however, couldn't help but question his father's earlier support, asking why he had helped him build the company if he had never truly believed in him. To this, his father unapologetically admitted that his faith hadn't been in Nick at all, it had been in Kin. Apparently, if she hadn't approached him with her proposal, he wouldn't have lifted a finger. In fact, he had only agreed because she had promised to follow all his conditions. Naturally, Nick wanted to know what those conditions were. His father casually revealed that one of them was forbidding her from entering into a relationship with Nick, or else the investment would be withdrawn. He added, almost sheepishly, that he had intended to scare her, thinking she might take advantage of Nick's wealth. What he hadn't anticipated was that Kin would actually stick to her promise. Nick, with his flair for drama, declared that he would repay every penny his father had given him but wouldn't allow anyone to control his life. Kin was seen back at her family's business, quietly working with her mother. Nick, unable to let things go, kept trying to contact her. He left voice messages, asking where she had disappeared to, but she didn't answer. And Arnold received the gift he and Sheila had made together. The gift, a memento of their time at the Potter's show, was accompanied by a note that spoke of cherishing the day forever. Soon after, Sheila called Arnold to her, and he teleported to her side, only to find himself humorously stuck on a baby swing. Sheila, in her quirky way, handed him a pacifier and declared that he was now part of their family. She even promised to give him the childhood he had missed out on. What followed was a series of ridiculous events, where Sheila acted like his teacher, catching him reading comic books she had secretly given him and then punishing him for it. She even sent him out of the classroom as if they were in school. Arnold, unable to hold back, found her antics absolutely hilarious. Later, they celebrated with graduation certificates, taking silly pictures together. Sheila went the extra mile, declaring the day as Arnold's new birthday. She had baked a cake, complete with decorations, and asked him to make a wish. Arnold, with all sincerity, wished to stay in her world forever to protect her. They blew out the candle together, and Arnold sealed the moment with a kiss, finally accepting his feelings and his place in Sheila's life. However, Fate had other plans, as Arnold vanished into thin air, leaving Sheila heartbroken. She initially thought it was a joke, but when reality sank in, she frantically searched for him. Her search even took her to his house, where she discovered that all the ancient items he had brought along were gone. It became clear that he had returned to his own world. Meanwhile, Arnold found himself back in his ancient era, surrounded by confused villagers. They couldn't understand where this oddly dressed man had come from, while Arnold, for his part, realized he might have to play the villain to get what he wanted. Ironically, the villagers hailed him as their hero, leaving Arnold utterly confused about his new reputation. Despite the chaos, Arnold's thoughts remained with Sheila. He tried everything to return to her world but failed, even going so far as to reenact her water-based wish ritual. His efforts proved fruitless. Sheila, holding the gift Arnold had left behind, seemed to have accepted the harsh truth Arnold had returned to where he belonged. And Nick began to understand why Kin had been so hesitant about their relationship. He realized she had always hinted at the possibility of not staying with him forever. As for Kin, she appeared to have moved on, fully immersed in her family's small restaurant. Nick tried to meet her but couldn't. Though her mother offered him some wisdom, if he truly loved her, he needed to grow up. After all, no mother wanted her daughter to end up with an immature partner. Sheila planted seeds and quietly said to herself that she knew Arnold was trying to return, and she would wait for him. No matter how long it took, Sheila was eagerly waiting for Arnold to return. No, she didn't know when he would come back or if he ever would. However, she resolved to wait for him until her last breath. While waiting, she returned to her normal life. On the other hand, Nick wanted to achieve something significant to bring Kin back into his life. One day, while returning from a meeting, Sheila's heel got stuck, just like it had once before, when Arnold had helped her. She was reminded of him again, but chose not to cry. Instead, she decided to stay strong and wait for him. Both Nick and Sheila realized they had no option but to wait to get their love back. Even Sheila's mother, noticing her dedication to work, started taking more care of her. She asked Sheila why she had begun attending meetings when she never did so before. Sheila explained that she used to handle such meetings earlier, but after Kin left, her boss had to take over those responsibilities despite lacking much experience, so she decided to support him. Later, Sheila's mother asked about Arnold and mentioned that he hadn't been seen around lately. Sheila replied that he had returned to his hometown. This surprised her mother, as she hadn't been informed about his departure, but she wished him happiness wherever he was. After her mother left, Sheila felt as though Arnold hadn't even informed her before leaving, so there was no reason he would have told her mother. The next morning, Nick was meeting an investor. He wanted to repay the money he owed his father and end their partnership. However, the investor advised him that the company had been functioning due to Kin's efforts. If Nick ended his partnership with his father, it might affect the company's value and deter future investors. Jokin understood the investor's point, realizing that without new investments, he wouldn't be able to repay his father. After the meeting, Nick canceled all his remaining appointments for the day and decided to sell his house to raise funds. Although Sheila tried to dissuade him, Nick was resolute. On his insistence, she put his house up for sale, though she hoped to find a way to stop him. She called Kin, requesting to meet and discuss an important matter. Kin agreed. Sheila was surprised to see Kin working tirelessly, as this was unlike the Kin she knew from the office. She asked if she didn't feel exhausted working day and night. Kin replied that physical exhaustion was far better than mental stress. Sheila informed Kim about her boss wanting to end the partnership with his father and selling his house to secure investment. She wondered if this decision was influenced by Kin's resignation and asked if Kin could return to persuade him otherwise. But Kin made it clear that she had no connection with the company anymore and didn't think it was appropriate to interfere. Despite this, she later messaged Nick, asking why he was going to such lengths. Though Nick initially planned to explain everything, he changed his mind and advised Kin to rest instead. Sheila, overwhelmed by her work burden, struggled to manage the problems she faced. Despite having Kin's notes, she couldn't function effectively without him and wished for her swift return. A colleague reminded her about the upcoming interview, which she had forgotten. This reminder saddened Sheila, as it brought back memories of the novel she and Arnold had written together, making her emotional. Meanwhile, an agent also informed her that a buyer had been found for Nick's house. When Sheila relayed this to her boss, he seemed to have been waiting for this news. Nick's father also learned about his son's efforts to repay him but refrained from stopping him. Sheila felt deeply upset, seeing her boss in such a helpless state for the first time. Later, when her mother asked about the doll, a gift from Arnold, she confirmed its significance and wondered about Arnold's well-being. She realized Nick had sold his house and moved important belongings to the office. Others speculated that he had lost his house and that the company might soon close. Sheila dismissed these rumors, explaining that Nick had temporarily moved due to some work being done at his house. Sheila was seen drinking and inviting Kin to join her, She shared that Nick had sold his house and moved to the office. All the meetings and projects Kin used to handle had now fallen entirely on Nick, who was unable to write or manage the workload. Sheila pleaded with Kin to return to the company and stop Nick from overburdening himself. However, Kin declined, saying she had tried to talk to Nick, but he wasn't willing to share the real reasons behind his actions. Looking at the current situation, Kin felt that he would never listen to her. She thought he had always done whatever his heart desired. Nonetheless, she mentioned that she had brought a beer cake for Sheila, saying it had looked so cute that she couldn't resist buying it for her. As soon as she saw the cake, tears welled up in her eyes because it reminded her of a similar gift Arnold had once given her. Even she was unable to understand her own reaction. Before she could ask or reflect further, she got a call from Nick. Upon reaching the office, Nick informed her that he had finished writing the script and instructed her to review it and send it to the editor. He also apologized for calling her to the office so late at night. During their conversation, Sheila asked why he didn't stay at his parents' home, to which he explained that he felt much better there than in his stifling house. As she moved to pick up a page from the script lying on the table, she noticed a fire had started there, triggering a panic attack. Seeing this, Nick quickly ran to grab the fire extinguisher, but Sheila's condition worsened. She began calling out Arnold's name for help. Arnold, who was in the ancient era, reportedly heard her cries. Alarmed, he rushed out and started searching for her but could only hear her voice. At that moment, Fairy appeared and told Arnold that he could give him another chance to save her, but only if Arnold completed a mission for him in return. Without hesitation, he agreed, saying he would do whatever Fairy asked, though his immediate priority was to save her. Fairy asked him to think carefully, warning that his relationship might also be at risk. Regardless, Arnold remained determined. When he reached her, he picked her up and laid her on the sofa. As soon as she regained consciousness and saw him, she hugged him tightly, expressing how much she had missed him. However, Arnold distanced himself, questioning her intentions and asking who he was and how he had ended up there. Sheila assumed he had forgotten everything and began explaining that she was his girlfriend. Arnold dismissed her explanation as nonsense, ignored her, and started walking away. When she followed him and asked if he truly didn't remember her, he acted as though it was their first meeting and sternly told her to stop flirting with him and not to follow him. He even threatened to harm her if she continued. Despite her pleas, Arnold left. She called out, saying she knew not just his name but everything about him. She revealed that he was the young master and a character from her novel, which she had written herself. She added that Fairy had sent him as her unforgettable love and described him as her best friend, her closest confidant, and the person she had missed most in her life. Although Arnold understood her feelings, he still ignored her and walked away. When Sheila attempted to follow him again, he became furious and warned her not to, saying he neither understood nor wanted to understand her words. At the office, Kin bought food for him, and seeing his condition, she became even more concerned for her. Sheila went home, but before that, she decided to visit Arnold's house to check on him. Unfortunately, he wasn't there either, leaving her sitting there, feeling sad. Arnold was drinking, and he thought about Fairy Zen. Arnold had been doing all this because he was planning to leave again and didn't want to hurt Sheila once more. It was hard for him to endure, but he felt it was better to stay away from her to spare her the pain. On the other hand, Sheila, hugging his teddy bear, wondered what was wrong with him and why he was behaving this way. She suddenly got an idea and realized what she needed to do. Arnold, still feeling sad, came to her house to check on her and felt relieved only after seeing her lights on, confirming she had arrived home safely. He assumed she must be feeling the same way as he was, but to his surprise, she seemed very happy. Seeing her in such a good mood, he thought to himself that while he wished for her happiness, he couldn't understand how she could be so happy without him. Even if she thought he had lost his memories, he had still been her boyfriend once. As Sheila went inside, she called him for help, prompting Arnold to immediately rush over. She then spoke in a bossy tone, asking if he now understood the nature of their relationship. She told him he must do everything she said from now on. First, she ordered him to take off his shirt and go for a bath, as his long clothes must be making him feel hot. Still pretending, Arnold asked who she was to give him orders and told her to stay away. Sheila reminded him that she was his girlfriend, so he had to listen to her, warning that if he didn't, he'd regret it. Even though Arnold resisted and tried to leave, Sheila kept insisting, and since she had the power to control him, he had no choice but to comply. Despite his best efforts to leave, he eventually went for the bath as she had instructed, wondering where she had suddenly gained so much confidence. While bringing clothes for him, she told him to change after the bath, which left him blushing as if she were seeing him for the first time. After changing, Arnold asked if she didn't have any other shirts, as the one she gave him was too small. Sheila replied that she had many shirts, but this one belonged to her boyfriend. She sarcastically questioned why he cared. Was he her boyfriend? Angry, Arnold glared at her and was about to leave, But Sheila stopped him and insisted he stay with her. Knowing she had the power to compel him, Arnold reluctantly agreed. She showed him a room, but he said he couldn't stay there as it wasn't appropriate to sleep in a girl's house. Sheila assured him that she wasn't treating him like a boyfriend and asked him to stay the night since he had nowhere else to go. Despite her assurance, Arnold tried to leave again, but as he opened the door, he found Nick there with a packed bag, ready to move in. Nick mentioned that Sheila had invited him to stay for a few days. Seeing this, Arnold canceled his plans to leave, reasoning that he couldn't leave his girlfriend with another guy. Even though Sheila didn't stop him from leaving, Arnold eventually said he had no place to stay, so he would spend the night there. He didn't even let Nick enter her room. Instead, Sheila asked him to wait outside while she took Arnold inside to talk. She confronted him, telling him to stop pretending and questioning if he wasn't tired of all this by now. Sheila then pointed out that she had never seen an ancient person wait at a traffic signal. She had already realized that Arnold was pretending, and poor Arnold felt so embarrassed that he believed he had made a fool of himself. Not her. Later, Sheila hugged him and asked him to tell the truth, questioning why he had created all the drama, while Nick was alone and he was lost in thought about Kin's words. Somewhere deep down, he also realized how sordid his life was with Kin around. Meanwhile, Arnold revealed that Ferry had sent her on a mission, which once completed would require him to leave. He explained that this was the reason he hadn't wanted to tell the truth and didn't want to make any more promises. Arnold admitted that the previous time, he didn't know he would leave, but this time it was confirmed. Arnold said he couldn't let things happen the same way again. In response, Sheila reiterated that she had already told him she didn't want to stop living in the present out of fear of the future. Arnold replied that he couldn't intentionally cause her pain. He admitted that he is his first love and his weakness. Hearing this, Sheila was happy that he had finally expressed his feelings. However, Arnold clarified that he had said it only to make her happy. Nick, who had been waiting outside, remarked sarcastically whether their conversation had finally ended and requested a place to sleep. Seeing this, they laughed but took him to his room. Even here, Sheila and Arnold continued their bickering until Sheila quietly explained that he couldn't stay at a hotel because he couldn't afford it. Somehow, she managed to get him out of Nick's room. Before leaving, she asked him to take care of himself, wished him goodnight, and headed home. Arnold, standing there, remarked that it had been so long since he had seen her that he wanted to look at her a little longer. Hearing this, Sheila immediately approached him and kissed him. Later, Sheila noticed Arnold lying next to her bed. When she asked how he got there, he explained that he had come through the window, adding that it wasn't his first time, he had done it several times before. He mentioned that Nick was snoring so loudly that he couldn't sleep and decided to come to her. Although Sheila told him to leave, saying it could worsen his health, he requested to stay for the night, promising to leave early in the morning before her mother noticed. Sheila reluctantly agreed and gave him a blanket to sleep with. Later, Sheila discovered a note left by Arnold. He advised her not to kick the blanket while sleeping, which reminded her of a similar incident that had happened before. Afterward, she went to prepare breakfast for Nick. But when she saw that Arnold had prepared breakfast for Nick, she was so happy that Arnold only pretended that he didn't like Nick. Sheila asked Arnold to accompany her to visit her father's grave that weekend. Arnold agreed lovingly and joined her for breakfast. Meanwhile, Nick, observing them closely, asked if they always behaved this way. Arnold surprised him by revealing that Sheila was his girlfriend, leaving Nick shocked. He thought to himself how his juniors had entered a relationship while he couldn't even confess to the person he liked. The meeting was held where it was discussed that all the minor novels would be made public that day. After the meeting, Nick had to deal with several projects which Kin had previously managed alone. He was astonished at how she had handled such complicated projects effortlessly. Sheila explained that she always finished her projects on time, often completing the next week's work in advance. This made Nick realize that he was indeed quite immature. Nick took Kin to a special place and apologized for not fulfilling his promise to bring her there on every birthday. He admitted he had been too busy and marveled at how she managed everything independently, including her numerous projects. Within a few days, he realized how much Kin had endured for him. He began explaining that she had asked him about his father before, and he now wanted to become independent and a responsible person who doesn't burden others. Hearing this, Kin felt a surge of affection for him, as she always wanted to see him as a responsible person. The two then went skating together. They enjoyed themselves there. Sheila arrived with her mother and Arnold to meet Mark's father. In their presence, Sheila revealed that she wanted to introduce them to her boyfriend. Finally, her mother realized the truth. Sheila further shared that her novel had been shortlisted for the STAR program, which she had co-written with her boyfriend. Her mother, proud of her daughter's accomplishment, remarked on how remarkable she was. She even jokingly mentioned to Mark that Sheila turned out to be a better writer than him. Later, Arnold found some similarities between himself and Mark, especially their shared dislike for orange juice. To make amends, Sheila's mother asked Arnold about his future plans. When he admitted that he hadn't thought about it yet, she was visibly disappointed. As a mother, she naturally wished for her daughter's bright future. With a heavy heart, she expressed her concerns to Sheila. She mentioned that while Arnold seemed like a good person, he didn't have a clear plan for the future, which worried her. Sheila, trying to defend Arnold, requested her mother not to ask him such questions again, explaining that there were things she couldn't disclose. Even if she did, her mother might not believe them. However, her mother grew upset and remarked that she wasn't Sheila's biological mother anyway, so she shouldn't expect to be told anything. Frustrated, her mother left the conversation. On the other side, Arnold dreams about Mark, who secretly admired Sheila but pretended otherwise when she was around. Despite writing about her in his journal, Mark behaved indifferently toward her. Once, when Sheila approached him with a math question, Mark dismissed her, possibly out of fear that he might unknowingly reveal his feelings. When he woke up, Arnold found himself questioning whether Mark truly liked Sheila and wondered if Mark expected him to tell her about it. Arnold stepped outside and encountered Nick, who was imagining a plot for his novel. Arnold asked him to pause his creative process for a moment and listen to his situation. Arnold then presented Nick with a hypothetical scenario. He asked him to imagine being in a relationship with Kin, but later discovering that she once had a crush on someone else who also had a crush on her. Arnold asked Nick whether he would reveal this to Kin. Though initially hesitant, Nick eventually said he would tell her, reasoning that it would be better to tell her himself rather than have her find out later and be upset. Arnold, taking the discussion further, asked whether Nick would still reveal the truth, even if it meant disappearing from the world forever. Nick jokingly replied that he would, adding that if it came to that, she would likely make him disappear anyway, so it was better to be honest up front. While Arnold was serious about the conversation, Nick found humor in the situation, prompting Arnold to call him useless and walk away. Later, Arnold reflected on whether fulfilling the mission entrusted to him by Fairy would finally bring him closure. Sheila's mother, still upset, was preparing to leave for work. She even avoided speaking properly with Arnold when they met. Arnold went to meet Sheila and thought her mother might have forgotten something at home. However, upon opening the door, Sheila discovered that it was Arnold standing there with breakfast for her. As they ate, Arnold mentioned how her mother had asked him about his future plans the previous day and how his response had disappointed her. He admitted that he felt bad about it and wished he had been born like normal people in this world. Arnold told Sheila that if things had been different, he would have been her first love. Even if not her first love, he had at least become her first kiss. Sheila laughed at his playful words, and Arnold continued, saying that if he couldn't be her first love, he now wanted to be her first marriage. Hearing this, Sheila blushed. Later, at her office, Sheila was making stickers happily when Losing arrived with a cake for her. Surprised, she asked why he brought the cake, as it wasn't her birthday. Losing showed her the novel she had written, which had now become a trending hit after being published. No one had anticipated that she would gain fame so quickly. Her colleagues were thrilled for her, and Sheila herself was overwhelmed with joy. Nick, who generally didn't enjoy gatherings or celebrations, decided to join in the celebration, though he missed Kin and wished she were there to share the happiness. The group took a group picture, capturing the joyful and successful moment. Later, Sheila sent the picture to Kin, thanking her for always motivating her. Seeing this, Kin felt happy for her, especially knowing that Nick, who rarely celebrated, had joined the occasion. Nick, on the other hand, enjoys the positive reviews about his novel and its culture. Kin sent him a message expressing how proud she was of him for staying true to the path he had chosen and never giving up. In college, when Nick had won his first writing trophy, Kin had told him that even if she couldn't become a writer, he would succeed. She encouraged him, promising that one day she would work with him. Back in the present, Arnold was thrilled to see Sheila's novel trending. He messaged her, inviting her for dinner. She showed up at the restaurant but found Arnold missing. Just as she was about to call him, she heard his phone ringing under the table. Arnold appeared suddenly, wishing her in an unusual manner. Overwhelmed with excitement, Sheila had to ask him to calm down, jokingly threatening to break up with him if he didn't. Obliging, Arnold sat beside her and shared the positive comments people were making about her novel and its characters. Sheila thanked him, acknowledging that without his support, she wouldn't have been able to write the novel. She expressed her gratitude, calling herself lucky to have him in her life. Later, while heading to the restroom, Sheila saw a fire, which triggered a panic attack. She recalled the incident where Mark and his father had lost their lives in a similar fire. Arnold noticed her distress and rushed to her, hugging her to calm her down and taking her away from the scene. Now deeply worried about her worsening panic attacks, Arnold wondered if his presence in her life might be contributing to her condition. Silently, he promised himself to help her overcome her illness. When Sheila asked why he seemed so upset, Arnold reassured her it wasn't about her mother, as she wouldn't stop him from seeing her. However, he admitted he was thinking about Mark and how deeply Sheila had liked him. Even after so many years, Sheila clarified that while she liked Mark, she didn't like him more than Arnold. She explained that Mark had been very close to her during childhood, and they grew up together. However, as they got older, he distanced himself from her, stopped noticing her, and began hiding things. He even scolded her whenever she approached him and asked her to stop following him. Sheila recounted that one day, she mustered the courage to confess her feelings, thinking it might encourage him to talk to her. But when she approached him, he scolded her again, asking why she kept following him and told her to go home alone. This behavior hurt her deeply, and she could never express her feelings to him. She revealed that his mom had known about her feelings and had tried to create opportunities for her to interact with Mark. Sheila recalled the tragic night of the fire in her father's laboratory. Mark had risked his life to save her father, but the fire spread uncontrollably, claiming both their lives. That incident had left her with panic disorder. She told Arnold that Mark was talented, smart, and much better than her, and if he had been alive, he would have become a greater writer than even her boss. She felt guilty, believing his life was lost because of her. Arnold comforted her, assuring her that Mark never disliked her. He had always liked her. Arnold explained that, since his return from the Heavenly Palace, Mark had appeared in his dreams multiple times, which made him realize how much Mark cared for her. Sheila, however, felt it was unfair for Arnold to worry about someone he had never met in real life. Arnold was sitting alone, reflecting on what Sheila had said earlier about her disorder. She had mentioned that the doctors believed her disorder could only be healed by the very people responsible for it, and since they were no longer alive, her recovery seemed impossible. Arnold then recalled Fairy's mission completion story and realized his purpose: to help Sheila heal from her panic disorder. He posed a question to Nick: what if the novel's protagonist could remove his girlfriend's fears, even at the cost of disappearing forever? What would you do in his place? Before Nick could respond, Arnold had already found his answer. After leaving the room, Nick admitted that he too wouldn't have cared about his own life in such a situation. Meanwhile, Kin was seen reading Nick's novel, which was based on his real-life experiences. She realized that the protagonist's feelings and actions were deeply personal and closely related to Nick's own emotions. Reflecting on her memories with him, she recognized his constant support and how he never forced her to do anything, always allowing her the freedom to follow her dreams. The next morning, Sheila was thrilled to see Arnold's good morning message. At work, after completing her tasks, she requested a 2-day leave since the workload wasn't heavy. However, her boss shocked her by suggesting she resign instead. Stunned, Sheila questioned the suggestion, as taking leave was every employee's right. Her boss handed her a contract for a full-time author's position, explaining that she was too talented to remain an assistant. Arnold visited Sheila's mother, who was teaching dance classes. He told her he wanted to discuss something important. Sensing his intentions, she remarked that while she wasn't against their relationship, as a mother, she couldn't trust him with her daughter's future unless he had a solid plan. Arnold straightforwardly revealed that he wasn't from this world, but a fictional character from Sheila's novel. Her mother, recalling how Sheila had written about him, expressed disbelief. To convince her, Arnold demonstrated his superhuman abilities by performing high jumps. Finally convinced, her mother listened as Arnold explained his mission to heal Sheila's panic disorder. She mentioned that according to the doctors, only those responsible for the disorder could cure it. Arnold clarified that it wasn't caused by her father or Mark, but by Sheila herself. He believed that overcoming her fears would free her from the disorder forever. Sheila's resignation was accepted, and she was officially promoted to a full-time author. However, until a new assistant was hired, she had to continue handling some assistant tasks. As she was leaving the office, Arnold was already waiting for her. Seeing him, Sheila rushed to hug him and playfully questioned why he had come to pick her up, despite knowing she had dinner plans with Kin. Arnold replied that he wanted to celebrate her becoming a full-time author and be the first to hear about her new post. He teased her, saying she was too good to be anyone's assistant except his. Sheila, happy but slightly worried, acknowledged that the new position came with greater responsibilities. Later, during dinner, Kin prepared all of Sheila's favorite dishes to celebrate her achievement. Sheila admitted that she never imagined becoming an author. Her biggest dream had been to be an assistant. She thanked Kin for motivating her to pursue writing. When she asked about her dream, Kin expressed her wish to fulfill her dream boy's dreams, clearly hinting at Nick. Sheila understood her feelings, and she admitted that she too had once feared losing her loved one, but believed that as long as two people faced challenges together, they could handle anything. Sheila and Nick worked together while Arnold brought food but refused to share it with Nick. Though Arnold had no specific task there, he stayed close to keep an eye on his girlfriend, unwilling to leave her alone with Nick. When Nick mentioned his talent, Arnold laughed mockingly, pretending it was in a comic. Later, when Nick talked about relocating, Arnold quickly jumped in, asking when he planned to move, while Sheila silently told him to stop. Afterward, Sheila told Nick about her dinner with Kin, mentioning how concerned she seemed about him. Nick responded that he wouldn't return to her until he matured beyond his childish behavior. He added that if she chose someone else during this time, he would respect her choice and move on. Saying this, he left the room. Arnold then approached and firmly told Nick, "But your choice shouldn't change." Sheila, understanding Arnold's message, hugged him and assured him she had understood everything clearly. The next morning, Sheila knocked on Nick's door, urging him to get ready for work. Arnold, opening the door, teased her about being in a hurry. Handing her breakfast, he instructed her not to share it with anyone. Before she left for work, Arnold asked for a goodbye kiss, but Sheila playfully applied lipstick instead. Arnold hugged her tightly. At the office, Sheila conducted an interview for Kin, who had applied to become Nick's assistant. She asked the same questions Kin had once asked her during her interview. Kin gave the exact answers Sheila had given back then, impressing her. Sheila selected Kin for the position and took her to surprise Nick. Seeing Kin unexpectedly, Nick was visibly shocked. Sheila tells Nick that they have hired a new assistant for him. Then, leaving the two alone to chat, she disappears like a magician with no exit plan. Nick stares at the new assistant in shock and blurts out if it is her again and whether he hadn't told her to do what makes her happy instead of sticking around and chasing his dreams for him. Kin smirks and responds that he had indeed told her to do what she loves, and she loves being around him, wanting him in her life. Nick, trying to maintain some authority, replies that he fired her and that she's not his assistant anymore, demanding that she leave. But she insists she's not going anywhere. She reminds him that they've both been through tough times together and that, despite having little back then, they owe themselves another chance. Nick, completely bewildered, doesn't know how to respond. After a moment of awkward silence, he stammers that they've got plenty of time and that she should take her time to think about it. After leaving the office, Sheila went to meet Arnold at his house, but he's not home. When she goes to her room and finds Arnold sitting there, wearing what looks like Mark's school uniform. Shocked, she asks what's with the outfit. Arnold, looking slightly embarrassed, replies that her mother picked them out and adds that her outfit is there too, instructing her to change quickly. Sheila has no clue what's going on. Before she can argue, Arnold adds that before he disappears for good, he wants to fix her panic disorder. He tells her that he knows she's trying to act brave and hide her feelings, but insists that it's his job to address he questions whether she really thinks he can leave peacefully knowing her issues remain unresolved. After some back and forth, Sheila reluctantly changes into her school outfit. When she returns, Arnold is waiting patiently but starts to leave abruptly, as if recreating a dramatic scene from a Kdrama. Sheila, recalling all their shared memories with Mark, runs after him. Arnold sat the same way as Mark, and Sheila, breathless but determined, followed him into the room. She recalled that when she wanted to confess her feelings to Mark, she couldn't muster the courage. Watching all this, she began recalling the time she spent with him, how he used to scold her constantly and never let her get close. Despite his cold attitude, Sheila always tried to approach him. She remembered how Mark, in the end, sacrificed his life for her. Now, crying her heart out, she said, "Mark, please forgive me. Sometimes I wish I'd never fallen in love with you. If only I hadn't called you for help that day, you'd still be alive and I'd be the one gone instead." Just then, Arnold stepped forward, hugged her tightly and said, "Silly girl. If Mark knew you were blaming yourself, he'd be so upset. Do you know why? Because he loved you too, so much in fact that he couldn't even tell you about it. He was just as scared as you to confess his feelings. In my dream, he told me everything. Why else would he sacrifice his life for you if he didn't love you? That was his choice, and what I'm doing now is mine." As he spoke, Arnold took her hand, holding a cracker, and moved closer to her. Surprisingly, Sheila didn't panic or have one of her usual attacks. Seeing her calm and composed, she smiled for the first time in ages and whispered, "Thank you." Arnold, overjoyed, kissed her gently. At that moment, his mission was complete. And as per the mysterious cosmic rulebook, he had to disappear forever. And just as predicted, he vanished into thin air. This time, though, Sheila was ready to let him go. Arnold had reappeared in his novel world feeling guilty about the bittersweet ending. He expressed his sorrow to the universe for the tragic yet poetic finale. It was now time to end Arnold's character forever. With a serious tone, Arnold conveyed that he had never begged anyone for anything in his life, but before he disappeared, he had one last request. He asked Fairy that if his request was reasonable, he hoped she would fulfill it. He wished for someone to always be there for the person he cared about, to take care of her, and ensure she never suffered. He specifically requested that Sheila shouldn't find someone like him a Mr. Nobody, but someone worthy of her, someone who truly deserved to make her happy. Fairy Jan, slightly taken aback, nodded and promised to try her best. With a sigh, Fairy told him that his life is not over yet, and he began sharing a story about something that had happened years ago. It was during a time when everything started, when the fairy first encountered chaos and magic. At that time, the fairy had no idea how to handle it. A cheerful kid saw Faith tossing candy wrappers into a trash can with superhuman speed. Intrigued, Mark asked how he did it. Fairy responded that if Mark gave him his candy, he would reveal the secret. Mark handed over his candy, and the fairy remarked that since he was an adult, he could do whatever he wanted. Fairy was happy, and he told Mark that if Mark dropped it in water and made a wish, he would fulfill it. Fairy thought that this boy would ask another silly wish for toys or something. However, the real twist came when Mark, instead of wishing for toys, wished for protection for his friends. It was a deep and serious wish, something Fairy couldn't ignore. He had no idea how tough life could get, and unfortunately, Fairy Jan got caught in the chaos too. After all, life was unpredictable, and fate was beyond anyone's control. Fairy reflected on the situation. He wondered if, when Mark grew up, he would remember her. He questioned if Mark would forget about Sheila and fall for other girls. However, he knew one thing for certain: no matter what happened, Mark would never forget her, and he even gave up his life for her. It was a complicated and messy situation. At first, Fairy hadn't known who the mysterious girl was, but after seeing the coin he had given Mark, he recognized her. He spent years waiting, hoping she would make a wish. It seemed that it was all about making her happy, but she never made the wish. Eventually, when she finally wished for unforgettable love, Fairy knew he had no choice but to fulfill it. Arnold wondered why he had chosen to help her and why she had chosen him. Fairy Jan, seeing everything unfold, smiled softly, knowing that, in the end, it was all part of the magic. It was revealed that Mark was the one who had initially created Arnold's character. He had always liked Sheila since childhood, which is why he created the big hero Arnold to protect his dear friend. After Mark left this world, all of his thoughts and emotions were transferred to Arnold, who did exactly what Mark had always wanted to do. The fairy then congratulated Arnold, saying he had passed his final test. Upon hearing this, Arnold was quite curious and asked what the test meant, since he had been told that after completing the mission, he would disappear forever. Fairy Jan confirmed that it was true. He had indeed said that after the mission, Arnold's character would vanish, and with that, Arnold teleported to another realm. Now, he was no longer the corrector of any novel, nor did he possess any superpowers. He had become an ordinary human, destined to live in this world forever. Seeing this transformation, Sheila was overjoyed and didn't believe that Arnold had returned. Arnold, too, was incredibly happy and showed Sheila Mark's diary, sharing the entire story Fairy Jan had told him. Now Fairy had brought him back from that world. Arnold kissed Sheila, and in return he kissed him back, as both began their happy life together. In the office, everyone is a little uncomfortable to see Kin like an assistant. She used to be the CEO of this company, but now she is trying to adjust. Kin told them that they didn't need to call her anything formal and could simply address her by her name. Then, Nick's father came to the company to meet with her. He noticed her in the office and sat down with her, asking for tea. Mr. Liu, curious, asked her why she had returned to the company after leaving. She apologized, saying it was a personal matter and she couldn't share the details. Mr. Liu, pressing further, asked if she remembered the deal they had made together. She replied, "Yes, I remember it well." Politely, she explained that she no longer needed to follow him because he was no longer a partner in the company. When Nick knew this, he headed toward his office. Upon seeing his father, he angrily began scolding him. He told his father that if he had any complaints, he should address them directly to him instead of threatening his love. He assured his father that he would follow whatever instructions he gave, but asked him not to interfere between them. Mr. Liu, seeing his son's anger, scolded him, saying, "What kind of way is this to speak to your father?" Nevertheless, he acknowledged that the tea was very good, adding that he hadn't realized such good tea was served at the company and suggested that he should send him some for his office. Nick, still in disbelief, asked her, how did he become so nice? He then asked if Kin had said anything to him about the situation. Well, Nick's father apologized to her and explained that he did all this to make his son stronger. He had never wanted to come between them, but he needed to understand his son's feelings. Kin said that it didn't matter what his father had said, but what mattered was what had just been said to him. With that, they shared their first kiss. Arnold and Sheila explained everything to her mother and apologized for not telling her the truth earlier. At first, her mother was upset, but then, after listening to Arnold's words, she softened and said, "You've really become a good person now. If you're in pain, then I believe you have truly changed." She also believed that Arnold would never leave Sheila. With great excitement, Nick promised his mother that he would never leave her. As for the next steps, the mother began to think about their future, particularly how they would register their children. Nick then showed her his ID card, saying that now he was officially a part of this world and had full rights to stay wherever he wished. After that, the mother happily began discussing the children's future plans, and everyone was quite pleased. The two of them had already gotten their marriage certificate, and the mom kept looking at it, not being able to get enough of it. She didn't know how many times she had already looked at it. After that, as a marriage gift, she gave bed sheets, dry fruits, and some money, which was meant for Arnold. She told her that from now on, he would refer to her as mom instead of aunt, as her status had changed. They tell Nick about their wedding, saying that after their wedding next week, they would be living in this house. In reality, they were asking him to leave the house, but Nick, upon hearing about their wedding, only congratulated them. He then said that he would give them a gift on their wedding day. He added that if they had nothing else to say, he was going to sleep. Saying this, he left, and Arnold remarked how foolish Nick was. He didn't know who had made him this way. Afterward, Kin had arrived to take something. Though she had certainly not come on her own, it was Sheila who had called her to take Nick along. Before leaving, Kin told Arnold to spend some happy time with her. Arnold, upon hearing this, was very happy. On the other hand, his own desires had been fulfilled as well. Nick thought that Kin was taking him to her home, but instead, she brought him to the house that he sold. She explained that she couldn't let go of the house that he loved so much. She had bought it back for him. Nick was happy to hear this. Afterward, they went inside, where Kin told him that she had a job for him, but he wouldn't be paid for it. If he didn't manage to retrieve a gift that she had been trying to open, he would have to take the job. Otherwise, it would be up to him. Kin tried to reach the gift, but Nick started to think about the memories of when he had first decided to start his company, and how Kin had always supported him. Over the years, many ups and downs had come, many things had changed, but Kin had never changed for him. When Kin had missed 2 chances to open the gift, Nick started worrying that he might miss a third and remain single forever. Determined, he took the gift and opened it himself. The first attempt was successful, and Kin quickly started to open it. It was a ring, meaning that she wanted Nick to propose to her, and he definitely wanted the same. He thanked her for coming into his life, for staying with him, and for accepting him, and then proposed. She happily accepted, extending her hand, and their happy moment was sealed with a kiss. At Arnold and Sheila's wedding, Kin went to meet Sheila in her room, with Nick following her. Sheila stopped him and said that no men were allowed in the bride's room, so he should stay there and talk to the others. He could take photos instead. Now our lovely bride made her entrance, recalling the moments she had spent with Arnold. Every good and bad time they had faced together, she silently thanked him for becoming her unforgettable love. Her mother brought her to Arnold and gave her hand to the groom. She said that although she wasn't her biological mother, she had never seen a more sincere and beautiful girl. She handed her over to him, telling him to take care of her and love her in ways she couldn't give, promising him to give all the happiness she could not. Arnold promised to take care of her and let her live happily. Afterward, the two of them shared their wedding vows. Sheila said that the day felt like a dream, just like when they first met, and she thought she was dreaming. At first, he had troubled her a lot, and then she started caring about him, wanting to be with him and wanting to see him. She blamed him for making her feel that way, and now he had to take care of her. The excitement on their faces, with smiles and tears in their eyes. Arnold said that from now on, he was her husband, and hearing this, Sheila couldn't stop laughing. Arnold added that he had always wanted to call her his wife, but today was the first time, and from now on he would say it every day. He confessed that he was selfish, childish, and arrogant, but swore that he was none of that for her. He became so emotional while sharing this that tears wouldn't stop flowing from his eyes. Arnold had even forgotten the speech he had written. He had to pull it out and start reading it. He tried to reassure Sheila that from now on he would never let tears fall from her eyes. He promised to give her all the happiness she deserved. After delivering the emotional speech, they exchanged rings and sealed their wedding with a kiss. Both were overjoyed, but oddly enough, their office colleagues seemed even happier for them. When the bouquet was tossed, many girls had gathered, including Jayo and Yufin. The youngest couple, who had brought the rings earlier, also participated. As soon as Sheila tossed the bouquet, the guy who caught it immediately handed it to a girl and said, "I like you." The poor guy had probably been trying to confess for ages. The girl liked him back. She was just waiting for him to propose so she could say yes. After the function, the three of them returned home, and Mom was carrying all Sheila's things, but she wouldn't let her move in with them. Instead, she told her to go to her own house, as now they were officially married. Then we saw Sheila and Arnold sitting on the bed, both blushing like it was their first time meeting each other. Sheila awkwardly asked how to start the conversation, but before they could figure it out, Sheila, taking the lead, kissed Arnold. Next day, Sheila brought Arnold to meet her dad. Arnold said, "I've married your daughter, and if you need a promise from me to keep her happy, I promise I will always take care of her." He then told Mark, "I know your wishes, and I promise to fulfill them. Not just for Sheila, but for your mother too. Then Sheila went to buy her novel, which had already been published, but was shocked to find that there was no book under the name Mr. Bad. The shopkeeper informed her that all the books by Mr. Bad had sold out within an hour. The famous Mr. Nick had recommended it, so the books were bound to sell fast. Sheila was very happy, but Arnold was a little upset, saying that Nick always stuck his nose into everything. To celebrate this, Arnold said, "I want a little baby," but Sheila shot back, "First, find a job. Handling babies isn't exactly a walk in the park." Without listening to Arnold, she kept teasing him. A few years later, the couple had a lovely little daughter. After leaving them with their dads for a moment, Sheila and Kin rushed back to see Arnold, when Nick quickly changed positions. He playfully blamed him. "It's all Arnold's fault. I was cooking in the kitchen." Arnold, of course, denied it. Meanwhile, Sheila took their adorable daughter, Gigi, to wash her hands. They had dinner together, discussing the upcoming book signing event for Sheila's novel. Later, Sheila handed her novel to Nick, thanking him for making her dream come true. Then the signing event started, with a fan shaking hands with her and taking selfies. Meanwhile, Arnold, looking on, got so jealous he kissed her right there in front of everyone. Arnold had become a professor at the university. Later, when they reached the park, Gigi asked, "Is there really a fairy living here?" To which Sheila replied, "I'm not sure, but there are a lot of memories here. It's where I first met your dad." Arnold picked her up and walked her home, sharing stories of their first meeting. The story ended, and it is revealed that it was actually Sheila's book being a fantasy novel, and she was telling this story to her fan meeting. When a person asked if such things could happen in real life, Sheila replied, "I wrote it to give hope to those who've lost their loved ones. Just because someone isn't in our life anymore doesn't mean we've lost them forever." When they asked if there was an Arnold in her life, Sheila answered, "Fantasy things never happen in my life. I don't have Arnold, but I do have my childhood friend, my love, my husband Mark." At that moment, Mark entered the room and his face matched Arnold, and everyone could see just how handsome he was. The reporters couldn't stop complimenting him as he went over and kissed his wife. Finally, Mark thanked everyone for attending his wife's session and kissed her in front of everyone, bringing the story to its happy ending.